the other way. Let's say that's yin, it went the other way into yang. It went from east to west. Now what I'm trying to say is, if I grew up with the belief, you're upset and it's my fault, and I should be different so you won't be upset, then after a while, maybe not logically but intuitively, I got to the idea of, I'm upset and it's your fault. So you be different, so I won't be upset. So it works both ways. You're upset and it's my fault. I should be different so you won't be upset. And if I'm upset, it's your fault, and you should be different so I won't be upset. And I think psychologists call that codependent. I think that's what that is. Energetically, because this medicine is about energy, when I take responsibility for other people's emotions, my energy drops. That's like heavy. The chiropractor across the courtyard from us at the Healing Arts Center says he always knows when people are taking responsibility, carrying other people emotionally, their chiropractic issue is L4 and L5, because the back's designed to hold one person, not two, physically. So if you can accept that we were trained to be responsible for other people's emotions, and that might not be really good training. It might make relationships difficult. Like if I get upset and I blame you, then be different so I'm not upset. And that tends to build resentment in relationships, because I begin to feel I'm responsible for your well-being. I don't want to do that unless we're talking about children. So, a lot of us have been taught to view the world like, you hurt my feelings. You hurt my feelings. If you look at this energetically, when I say you hurt my feelings, I have said to my energetic system, my subconscious, I am a leaf at the mercy of your wind. That lowers my serotonin. It depresses my immune system. It raises my cortisol and my homocysteine, my stress hormones, and it puts me in the victim role. Does that make sense? And if I say that with my words, I'm doing that. You hurt my feelings. You're in charge of my emotions. So you be different so I won't be upset. And if you're upset and I'm responsible for your emotions, then I won't dance the way I want to, or talk the way I want to, or act the way I want to, because I don't want you to be upset. That's this kind of relationship. And frequently, if I'm in this kind of relationship where somebody blames me for their emotions, I might turn around and blame them for my upset. So the relationship goes like this. There is this idea that intimacy requires this. That intimacy is impossible like this. Two parallel lines never touch. These lines are parallel. They never touch. These lines touch. So for intimacy to occur in relationship, this doesn't work. If I believe, or if I'm willing to accept the belief that my thoughts create my emotions, then what we're really saying is, you didn't hurt my feelings. You did something that I reacted to. And I can change my reaction if I do not wish to live as a leaf at the mercy of the wind. How many people here have heard somebody say, my job stresses me out? TV stresses me out. The weather stresses me out. Mr. Trump stresses me out. Mr. Biden stresses me out. Leaf at the mercy of the wind. How's that working for you? How is life as a leaf at the mercy of the wind? Now, some of us do this with lots of things. We can this with money. If this is money and I have a lot of money, my energy's high and I'm a happy camper. If I don't have a lot of money and I'm dependent on this for my happiness, if my happiness does not come from within, it's dependent on other people or objects or situations, then I am truly living my life as a leaf at the mercy of the wind. Here's an interesting thing. It appears, after studying this for a few years, like 40 years, that there's some corollaries. If my relationship with other people is like this, it turns out my relationship with money is like this. And my own body is like this. I may feel like a victim of my own body. It could turn out that my relationship with Creator, the great mystery, is like this. And the rumor is that Creator is trying to tell us the relationship with Spirit is like this. That it's within us. We don't have to be good or bow to the east or pray. We're connected to the great mystery, varied by the fact that we're born in this world. So for some folks, these are radical ideas. To give up the idea that you hurt my feelings, I would have to give up the idea that I'm a victim and you're a perpetrator. I would have to give up those ideas. Sometimes some of us don't want to give up that idea. One of my teachers a long time ago, a guy named Bob Martin, he said that if people in a victim role, if they're up on the cross and you put a ladder up there to try to help them down, they're going to kick you in the teeth. So I said, Bob, it didn't make sense. He said, of course it does. They're up here above all the rest of you. They're up here. Their situation is different. They're the victim. And you should look up to them. And they look down on you. And if you try to take away somebody's victimhood, they're going to hurt you. Emotionally or physically, verbally, if they can. This is part of their identity. And if you try to take away people's identity, that just doesn't work. We need to build our own identity. And some of us have inherited the victim identity. And it's not our fault. We inherit these things. We were taught to think a certain way. I was taught to think when I was little that if my dad was upset, it was my fault and I should be different. And then when I was older and started raising kids, I did that crazy kind of stuff. I would say that crazy stuff to my son. You piss me off. I would say that to my son, if you can believe that. And now I have grandchildren, and guess what? Have you ever heard that trip, the sins of the fathers are visited upon the sons for 7 generations? That seems to be true. Although my son has all daughters, there's some interesting karma. Yes, my spouse told me that that's the karma. Because of the way I behaved as a young man with women, that I have daughters and granddaughters. That's the karma. So, looking at this stuff means that we become aware of how we set up verbally, mentally. So our language becomes critically important. I was in a session yesterday with a young man from Houston. He drives over to have a couple-hour session once every 2 weeks. He's a lawyer, and he wants to keep human. So we were talking yesterday, and he got into this thing, how easy it is for him to say, I judge myself. Now that sounds pretty normal. However, it's not natural. Because when I say I judge myself, I have said this, I judge myself. That's two. I judge myself. Well, when I was born, my grandchildren were born, my children were born, they didn't have that idea. There's two. And the voice that judges me that I didn't have when I was born is not I. I might call it I. That voice in my mind that judges me is not I. It's an inheritance, a program that was put in my computer. And if thoughts create emotions, this seems to be how it works. And we have a lot of data from neurobiology now that says when my thoughts are judgmental and critical, my thoughts, if my thoughts are judgmental and critical of other people, it creates the emotion of anger. Other people don't make me angry. My judgments of other people create anger. My belief that people should be different creates my anger. And this is perfect because self-judgment creates guilt and shame. Thoughts create emotions. Judgment of other people creates anger. Self-judgment creates guilt and shame. When I judge other people, my thoughts are critical and judgmental. My carotid arteries contract. How about that for instant karma? I judge you, my carotid arteries contract. Instant karma. There's no time lag. None at all. And what we found out from neurobiology is when my thoughts judge you, my neuroplasticity stops. What that means is I cannot have new ideas. It stops dead. So I can stop myself from having new, broader ideas with self-judgment or judgment of other people. It really doesn't matter which direction the judge is going, this way or that way. I suspect that's why the Jesus person spent a lot of time suggesting we judge not. I suspect that's the message he was trying to give to us. The judgment is not good for you. It sets it's hard on the body. It changes the brainwave from alpha, peace, to beta, upset. My thoughts change my brainwave, my cortisol, my homocysteine, my serotonin, my endorphins. My thoughts create my reality. And in our society, we frequently say, I'm upset and it's your fault. We don't take responsibility for our emotions. We blame other people. My job stresses me out. Really? Fascinating. So you should quit jobs. Or maybe learn to be in the world without reacting with so much judgment. When I'm judging the world, I want people in the world to be different. There is this rumor that when I want people to be different, my heart closes, and at a deeper level, this might disconnect me from spirit. Now, I don't mean spirit in a religious sense. In this sense, spirit is whatever keeps the growing, whatever keeps the wind blowing, whatever keeps my electrons moving, which keeps me alive. Indigenous people call it the great mystery. They say to try to understand it is absurd, that I have a human mind. I cannot understand spirit. It's way beyond anything I can understand. There is this idea, though, that I have a connection with spirit. Judgment, blame, and criticism messes with that connection. I'm hoping that makes sense to you. I'm in control of my connection with spirit by how I set up the world. And I may have set up the world this way because of what I was taught when I was little. It's not my fault. I was taught to judge, criticize, and complain. I grew up in a family where there was a lot of criticism, blame, and complaints about the way the world was. And that's not blaming anybody, that's acknowledging. Because my father was taught by his father, and he was taught by his father. And it came down to me, and it goes down to my son. So my part is to look at how frequently my thoughts move into judgment of the world or other people, and how quickly my thoughts separate me from peace and feeling connected to spirit. And the other level is how quickly do I blame the world, emotions. Mr. Trump was quite useful to me for 4 years. Before him, the president was around for 8 years, and I had the same challenges with him. With me, it doesn't seem to matter whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. I mean, my mind can get into judging no matter who it is or what they do. So my mind was well trained because I wasn't stupid. I learned quickly. I learned to believe my judgments. And that's an important statement. I can be aware of judgment. Do I agree with them? They don't have any juice at all unless I agree with them. My agreement is the power. So if somebody pulls in front of me and my judge says, you're a, leave that part out, an immediate judgment. Do I agree? Do I add to that? If I do, if I agree with the judgment of this guy that pulled in front of me, remember, my carotid arteries contract. You got that? I blame you and I'm hurting me. Perfect karma, immediate. So part of this medicine is this thing we call stalking. So for 4 years I used Mr. Trump to help me stalk myself. So here's how it works. Mr. Trump would get on TV and I would hear my judgments. I've never seen anybody that arrogant. That's my first judgment. And I'm thinking, I'm waking up a little bit, I'm upset. When I'm looking at him saying he's very arrogant, I'm upset. I'm judging Mr. Trump. He's 1,700 miles away on TV, and my thoughts are judging him, and I'm getting upset. So a stalker, someone interested in a higher level of consciousness, wait a minute. I do understand the word stalking has negative connotations in our society. So I want to be real clear. 1,000 years ago, on this continent and south of us, someone who stalked themselves was considered to be on a very high spiritual endeavor. They were looking at their reactions to the world. They were leaving everybody else alone. So I used Mr. Trump to stalk myself. And what that means is I'd see Mr. Trump on TV, there he is, and I'd say, I have never seen anybody as arrogant as you are. Oops. If the world is a mirror, I'm looking at my own arrogance. What I'm saying to you is if I react to his arrogance, I have an equal amount of arrogance, or I wouldn't react to it. Now, some people don't like this medicine for that reason. Right there. This is called awareness and responsibility. I'm aware that I react to you physically, emotionally, and mentally. How about that? It's in all three dimensions. So therefore, it is a spiritual issue. If I react physically, emotionally, and mentally in this medicine, it's an agreement that this is a spiritual issue. That spirit wants to see something. So, Mr. Trump, I see how arrogant you are. The next move is I start looking for my arrogance. Where does it show up? How often does it show up? Do you know I can read the news and my judge will look at every article and tell everybody in the article how they should behave? It has a solution for everybody about all of their difficulties and how they should behave. My judge is not me. I much prefer calm, peaceful, intimate, close. I much prefer that. My judge prefers this. Distance, separation, upset. So, if I see Mr. Trump's arrogance and I'm awake enough, I'm aware that I'm reacting, and I'm responsible for my reactions. My next move is to look for my arrogance. If I'm with somebody who's very critical and judgmental, self-righteous and self-important, they know how other people should behave. And I feel myself reacting physically, emotionally, mentally, and I can stay awake to realize this is a spiritual issue. Spirit has put this person in front of me to help find how judgmental and critical I am. And I can accept that, or I can say, it's them. Pointing at them creates this again, finding my own judgment, arrogance, self-pity, fear, and self-importance creates this. So these are my choices: awareness and responsibility, or blaming. Our culture right now seems to be in a movement of blame and criticism. It appears that social media helps with that. You may have heard people say, don't use that word, I'll be offended. Use that pronoun. Don't dress like that, don't act like that, don't vote like that, don't think like that. You may have heard people say that. If you behave that way, I'll get offended. Well, if you're a stalker, the other thing, go ahead, get offended. And I'll look for when I do that. When I want people to be different, and I get offended because they're not the way I want them to be. My heart has closed. So all of this medicine is based on awareness and responsibility. It has nothing to do with changing the world or other people. So if I'm in a relationship with somebody and I'm having difficulty, I'm looking for when my thoughts are judgmental, when I want her to be different than she is, when I'm feeling self-pity, when I'm feeling fear, when I'm aware of self-importance. So this medicine way looks for 4 things that are called our self-indulgences. Our self-indulgences weaken us, and our self-indulgences were taught to us. It's not our fault. So my first self-indulgence is judgment, you or myself. That weakens me, lowers my serotonin, raises my blood pressure, drops my cortisol, raises my cortisol. Judgment that was taught to me. When I was born, when my children were born, and my grandchildren were born, they didn't have any judgment. They didn't have that. They weren't taught that yet. My granddaughters rolled around the floor. They didn't care if they were fat or skinny or black or white. She didn't even care if she pooped in her pants. I mean, it didn't make any difference to her at all. No self-judgment. Where do you reckon she learned that? So, the first one is judgment of myself or other people. If you're on a religious road, on the Jesus road, you understand that he spent time talking about that. A lot of stories. I'm not sure anybody listened. They kind of hung him up and judged him too. So for Sundancers, we say Jesus was the first Sundancer. He was tied to the tree and pierced. And at Sundance, that's what we do. We're tied to the tree because we're pierced. And we dance, we tear loose and have a vision. So they say Jesus was the first Sundancer. So the second self-indulgence is self-pity. Oh, poor me, I'm getting old. Oh, poor me, I'm not rich. Oh, poor me, I'm not 7 feet tall and play for the Lakers. Oh, poor me. So, to stalk that, I start looking for my self-pity. It's not hard. Really, it's not hard. If I'm aware and responsible, go into the grocery store and the lady in front of me puts 27 in the 15 only line. There it is. I can hear my judge say, what's the matter with her? She can't count? Of course she can count. And then the next part, I'm going to have to wait on her. There's my self-pity. That's also my self-importance. I am so important that she should get her stuff out of the way and let me do what I am going to do. I am so self-important. My other one is fear. Do you know that most of my fear is created by my mind? I really cannot find any fear, except one or two, that was created by the external world. And those are in my history. Nobody's been shooting at me regularly. It hasn't happened for many, many years. Long time. My mind can still create fear. My mind can keep awake at night creating fear. Clinically, we call it anxiety, where the mind worries about the future, not now. Now could be just fine. And my mind can wander around in the future and create what clinically we call anxiety, where I'm trying to control the future from right now. I hope that makes sense to you. So part of this medicine, if we're aware of how much my mind wanders around in the future or the past, is to begin to retrain my mind to stay here. Who's in charge of me? My mind or me? My mind is not me. It's a computer I have to run this situation, to adapt to this world, to learn. My mind can move into higher levels of consciousness with awareness, responsibility, a sense of us. My mind can move into lower levels of consciousness, anger, fear, resentment, self-pity, with blame, criticism, and a denial of how connected we are. The denial would be meeting somebody like Mr. Trump, saying that he's arrogant without looking at my own arrogance. And here's a fascinating thing that took me a few years to learn. Well, it took me a few years to believe it. One of my teachers pointed it out over and over again, but I just didn't believe it. He pointed out to me that when I own my own arrogance, my judgment of Mr. Trump disappears. Fascinating. I can clean it up if I'm willing to be responsible and aware. So, Mr. Trump, you can help me find stuff that's been hidden, that my ego has denied. I'm not that arrogant. Well, if I wasn't that arrogant, I wouldn't react to him. I'd be indifferent. It's called compassionate indifference. It's one of the things that we strive for. Look for my reactions to people. I stalk that kind of stuff within myself, and I move to a place called compassionate indifference. I understand how arrogant you are, Mr. Trump, because I've been that arrogant too. And it's tough. It's solo. Isolated, separate from people. I understand, I've been there. So I move into compassion. It still doesn't mean I want to have lunch with him. I mean, that's not what that means. I prefer to have lunch with people who are not upset. And I also prefer not being upset looking at other people. So if I don't want to be upset with the world or the weather or my dog or my job, then it's my responsibility to look at how I create these emotions. That's called awareness and responsibility. It's the two legs of stalking. And we were taught that stalkers support themselves on these two legs, awareness and responsibility. So, of course, my question was, how come it's just us? And my teacher said, four-leggeds don't need this medicine. The ones that fly, they don't need this medicine. The ones that swim, the ones that crawl the earth, they don't need this medicine. They're in harmony all the time. They cannot not be in harmony unless they've been poisoned. It's only us. So stalkers work two legs, awareness and responsibility. I'm aware of my reactions. I take responsibility for them instead of saying, you create my reactions. And I begin to stalk myself. Where am I like that? And here's the next part of the series. If I can find my arrogance, am I willing to give it up? If I can find my judgment of people, am I willing to give it up? And here's an interesting thing. If I believe my judgments of other people, Mr. Trump is. If I believe my judgments of other people, I feed my own judge. In other words, my judge is not going to shut up as long as I believe my judgments of other people. You talk about you reap what you sow, instant karma, there it is. If I believe my judgments, my internal judge is being fed. My teacher called that feeding the demon. Go ahead and feed the demon. Now, the reason she said that, this was from Germaine Sitting Crow. She's a hunka relative to me, an older sister. So I call her Tanke. She called me Mishu, younger brother. Older sisters have rights and responsibilities if they choose to teach the younger ones. She has the right to correct me, which she took seriously. And she has a responsibility to do a good job teaching me. And she did both of those really, really well. And she would say to me over and over and over many years, if I love and honor myself, if I don't believe my self-judgments, if I believe I'm worthy of my own love, and I'm free with loving myself, then other people's judgments are like an arrow of smoke. If I believe my self-judgments, and I believe my judgments of other people, then other people's judgmental words are like an arrow into my heart. My preference is being smoke. Because if you can visualize the right brain shooting an arrow into smoke, I've had it with you. If you can imagine shooting an arrow into smoke, smoke don't care. Smoke just keeps getting higher. You can't hurt smoke with an arrow. So, if I'm willing to be aware and responsible of what I react to in other people or in the world, I can get to this place of living like smoke, that I can be with people without wanting them to be different. I can be with my sweetie when she's upset, and I don't have to get upset when she's upset. That was a big deal for me to learn that. In my family of origin, if one person got upset, one of the adults, everybody got upset. And what I learned later is we had this crazy idea that if you get upset and I get upset, that means I love you. Duh. That's not what that means. That means my happiness is attached to your behavior. My happiness is attached to your behavior. Somewhere, that's going to suck. That is not going to work. And if my happiness is attached to the weather, or to money, or to politics, or to my job, I don't have my glasses on. Tell me what that is.
We can't hear you on the video.
You can't hear me on the video without this. Oh my God, karma. That's what I get for judging you. Instant karma. You shut me off. I got it. All right. Thank you, Brian. Help me with my spiritual growth. You are, really. Really. I mean, you get that instant karma? I judge the microphone. Oh, there goes the video. Boom. You reap what you sow, huh? So what we're looking at in a gentle way is, what do I react to? How often do I blame other people for my reactions? How often do I want the world to be different? And I was taught this thing. If I get upset, when you get upset, that means I care about you. I mean, is that crazy? That's crazy, right? That means if you get upset, I'm supposed to fix it. And then I'm at the chiropractor's office with L4 and L5. I'm carrying you instead of just me. So this doesn't work in relationships. It doesn't work in relationships with my job either. How many people have you heard say, my job stresses me out? My job is the problem. If my job was different, I wouldn't be stressed. Everybody hear that before? Did you ever say that? I've said that. I worked for HEW for 18 months. Every day. I said, you people drive me crazy. And then somebody said to me, why don't you go to work for yourself? Yeah, that's a good idea. The only person driving me crazy now is the one who lives in my mind. And you know, the one that lives in my mind that judges me is not me. So here's an interesting experiment if you want to play with this. If you want to move this from the philosophical into the physical, imagine somebody in your life that you have some unfinished business with. Maybe somebody you were married to, maybe somebody that died, maybe a teacher, doesn't really matter. Somebody you might be unfinished with. And you know in your heart you're unfinished with them because when you think about them, there's a physical, emotional, and mental reaction. And the idea is that if I still have my energy attached to you, then I'm not free. If I die tonight, I die attached to you. I don't really want to do that. I'd like to die clean. And then obviously I'd like to live clean. Right? So I can find these people in my history that I have some unfinished business with. One of my teachers insisted that we make a list. It's called a recapitulation list, where we look for everybody we have unfinished business with. And we look at you and we begin to feel what we feel. Well, you know, as soon as I look at you, I can feel my heart contract. I'm contracting my heart when I look at you. That means I have some judgments of you. Now, here's an interesting game to play. To move over into this chair and look back at Hal and say, yeah, you're still thinking about me. And that was 30 years ago, dude. I'm still in your life. You still have some energy connected to me. And catch it, I'm indifferent, and you're not. So which one of us is peaceful? This one or this one? So what that means is an energetic level, energy, not philosophy, is I have some of my energy attached to you. You're holding some of my energy. I've given it to you. You didn't take it. So this may be of interest to you. It's kind of a hard model. In the years I've been doing this, I started doing this in 1974. I got a master's degree in psychology and I realized it didn't help me at all. I gave it a try for a while, and diagnosing and labeling just didn't change anything. So I got interested in energy. So what I learned with the help of some people that came into the office is that frequently with children that have been molested, they blame themselves. They turn it inward. And then they can never finish with the perpetrator because all the judgment is this way. So interestingly enough, when working with children or adults that have been molested in their history, it's really an important thing to have them to become aware of how self-judgmental they are because of something somebody else did. You got that? They judge themselves for what somebody else did. And that thought form is solid. It keeps things the way they are. There's no room for change. Neuroplasticity cannot occur. So when we're working with children or adults that have been molested or abused, we put the perpetrator in the chair and we have the person begin to feel their physical, emotional, and mental reactions. And we call this part of their spiritual journey, to learn to heal. So the way this was taught to me, very fortunately for me, was about 35 years ago. I was volunteering for a Hill Country Youth Ranch down in Ingram. They had a lot of counselors that were just graduated, and the street kids that were in the treatment center could kind of manipulate these new counselors. So anyway, they asked me to come down. I did some teaching and consulting, and they sent a young lady in who had what they call bulimia. She would eat and then vomit it up. I guess that's bulimia. So they were going to send her to the state hospital and hold her down and force feed her and all this crazy crap. So they asked me if I would see her. And she came in and sat down, and let's say her right there. And she says to me, every time I eat, I can't swallow. I can't keep it in my belly. I vomit. And there's something wrong with me. And I said, well, tell me what's going on. You know, my part's real easy. She had the hard part. She said, well, like there's this ball, this red ball in my belly, and there's no room for the food. I said, whoa, tell me about the red ball. She said, I don't know. It's been there a long time. I said, well, tell me how long it's been there. She said, she looked down. She said, when I was 12, I was held down and raped by 4 men, and it's been there ever since. So she was looking at the red ball, using right brain instead of left brain. Because if she could have figured it out, she would have. This is not an intellectual problem. And she's been through a lot of counseling before she got there. Talk and talk and talk and talk, right? So instead of trying to do that same stuff that she was familiar with, I asked her to look at the red ball, see how big it was, see what it felt like. Begin to go into the red ball, she became aware of her anger. Her anger was the red ball. Right? Her stomach was full of anger, and she started crying. And I said, you're angry and you're also sad. And she said, it was my fault I got raped. And I said, well, help me with that. You were 12 years old and this was 4 grown men. Tell me how this was your fault. And she said, I walked home from school a different way that day. Therefore, it was my fault. You all get that? She turned it inward with self-judgment for a 12-year-old. I saw it when she was 16. So she'd been carrying this quite a while. So our first movement for healing was to begin to have her move the anger from this way toward the perpetrators. Instead of blaming herself, to literally begin to blame them. Instead of this, she was doing this. And as she began to do that, a lot of energy came up. There was a lot of anger that had never been expressed. A lot of sadness, a lot of grief, a lot of frustration. But we had the perpetrators there. We had 4 of them. I had 4 chairs set up. And she was unloading on these guys, which she had never done before. I mean, this is not rocket science, right? This is fairly straightforward stuff. So we got along pretty well there, and she came back and she started eating, and they didn't send her to state hospital, and some other things went on. And she was a great teacher. She came in one day crying, and she said, I'm broken. I said, I don't know what you mean. She said, the other girls talk about how their boyfriends are with them and how much they enjoy it. So I ran into the shower, and I touched myself, and I realized I'm broken. I don't feel anything. So because my part is real easy, I said, tell me how long you've been like this, where you feel numb. And she said, ever since the 4 guys held me down and raped me. She said, so I'm broken. So we began to explore this idea. You understand, this idea is based in self-judgment. Again, there's something wrong with her because of what they did. You see how powerful self-judgment is? Always comes back to her. So what we discovered is that when they were holding her down, she went numb. Boom. So where we got to is she said, I just realized I was saying to them, you can do this to me, but you can't make me feel it. Got that? How strong is that? You can do this to me, but you can't make me feel it. It was her way of saying. Right? So she found out her numbness was her shield that had protected her. She didn't know this, but in my experience, Children that don't know how to go numb end up in a state hospital on Thorazine, or they find somebody's gun under the bed, or somebody's pills in the cabinet, or they run their bike in front of a bus. They leave if they don't find a way to go numb and survive. So she went from a position of shame, I'm broken, into there's nothing wrong with me. I have some magic shield that I defended myself with. So right on, kid. And she came back in the office about 2 weeks later, and she was laughing and says, Hal, guess what? I'm not numb. And I said, cool. She said, I said, do not tell me. You're 16 and I'm 35, and I do not want you telling me this. All I want you to tell me is you're happy that you're not numb. She said, I'm very happy. I'm not broken. I said, sweetie, you never were broken. That was only your self-judgment. But you see, she can believe this. She believed this. And it affected her body, her relationships, her school. After we got through this, one of her teachers said, I don't know what you did. All of a sudden, she's smarter. And I said, it's not me. She was that smart all the time. She just wasn't all here. Now she's all here. So she's functioning. So you see how powerful judgment is. I suspect that's why the Jesus guy told us repeatedly, judge not. Then again, I don't know how many people were listening. So on this medicine way, we're looking for self-judgment that we were taught. We look for that how often we judge other people or the world or our job or the weather or politicians. And then we begin to see there's a correlation. The more I believe my judgments of other people, the more I feed my judge. And that seems to be the quantum physics of this. That if it's going on outside, it's going on inside. If it's going on inside, it's going on outside. That's the quantum physics. The other thing we seem to have discovered is that the amount of judgment I do of other people is equal to the amount of self-judgment. Like some people say, I never judge other people, I only judge myself. Well, you can believe that for a while. But if you begin to wake up, you realize there is a lot of judgment of other people. It's equal to the self-judgment. So fortunately, we can pursue this in two ways. We can use the world and our reactions to other people to find our judgment, our self-pity, our fear, and our self-importance. Or we can look at how much our mind judges us. So if you like these kind of ideas, there's another interesting level to this that you can explore. Suppose, just for the heck of it, you took your judge, the one you inherited, the voice in your mind, the one you didn't have when you were born, the one the Jesus guy was talking about. Suppose you took that judge and you put your judge right there. You separated from it because it is not you. You did not have it when you were born. You can certainly live without it. You might even live better without it. So if you want to play, imagine your judge sitting over there. My judge used to look like my father. And then it looked like me. And then it looked like a black cloud. It was very dense and very deep. And I realized that I spent a lot of years trying to make you go away. Work harder, be harder, do more, make more money to make you go away. Maybe if I do this, you'll go away. Maybe you'll leave me alone. And when I came over here and sat in the judge chair, I could feel how strong this energy is. This is a feeling. It's not a philosophy or an idea. I'm tapping into how much energy I was taught to invest in judgment of myself or other people. So the maneuver is this: to be aware. When I'm in this chair feeling this, I'm aware. And then to be responsible. This is my judgment. This is how much of this is inside of me. And then to breathe into that and to not try to make it go away, not analyze it, not diagnose it, not talk to my neighbor about it, but to experience it. How much is here? And to breathe into it. And my right brain wants to distract me with memories and pictures. That's the booby prize. To stay with this feeling of how much energy is in self-judgment and judgment of other people. And as I breathe into it, and I find the middle of it, it falls apart. It disperses. So what I have done in energetic terms, I have brought the light of my consciousness into the center of the darkness. And that is my spiritual journey. To bring the light of my consciousness into the darkness. To not try to make it go away. To not analyze it, to not judge it, to not diagnose it, to not spend years talking about it, but to take awareness and responsibility. This is my darkness that I inherited. I didn't have it when I was born. It was put in my thought patterns. It's not my fault. I can transform this energy. I can change this. You all know about Lamaze? Well, nurse person, you know about Lamaze. They don't teach the ladies to avoid it. They teach the ladies to breathe into it. Fascinating, huh? Some of the ladies I've worked with told me they've had their children delivered in the Lamaze system. And being a male, I say, well, tell me how that was. And one lady said, I went into bliss. And I'm going, whoa, wait a minute. Hang on. You went into bliss having a baby? She said, yes. I listened to my nurse coach, and she kept telling me to breathe into it and find the middle of it. And at some point I did, and I went into bliss. The pain was gone, the baby was born. It was a holy experience. She said, you're a male. And I said, that's right. You do that. I'm glad I'm not female. That may be a little much for me. One of my teachers said, if I get my act together in this lifetime, I might earn the right to be born female next time. I didn't particularly like that. Right? So, does that make sense to you? Instead of trying to make it go away, to use it. One of my teachers was an old Navajo guy named Irwin, and he said, you got to use the manure to grow roses. Up on the reservation, we don't throw away manure. Cow manure, horse manure, dog manure, we don't do that. We compost that stuff. We grow flowers with it. There's the manure. The rose we're growing is a higher level of consciousness and awareness that this is my spiritual journey, to find my darkness. And if I can't find it, Creator will send somebody like Mr. Trump or any other president, or I can watch the news. Those people I react to with judgment, blame, and criticism, they're helping me find this. And we're looking for this. This is what stalkers do. We look for our judgment of ourselves or other people. We look for our self-pity. Oh, poor me. This happened to me when I was 25. Our fear, where our mind wanders around into the future, creates anxiety. My oldest sister, Germaine, used to say the mind is like an untrained dog. It wanders around into the future, it wanders around in the past. It doesn't stay home and guard the house, guard the animals, guard the children. That's what it's supposed to do. That's the dog's job, to be a protector. And the mind is the same way. An untrained dog and an untrained mind, neither one are very functional. We don't keep untrained dogs. It's disrespectful. The dog needs to know who he is and his identity, and that's as a protector, a guardian. So we train our dogs so they learn to take care of the family and themselves. So with the same format, we don't ever train our animals by hitting them or yelling at them, the way sometimes people train their children, because that cultivates this. So a long time ago, well, a few years ago, 20 years ago, I was working on my truck, working on transmission. I was all coated with oil, and I went into the garage, and I was taking off my clothes because I didn't want to drag all this stuff in the house. And I took off my belt, and my dog that I had gotten from a pound, a rescue dog, my dog is a good dog. He started doing this when I took off the belt. And I realized, holy cow, he's been trained with the belt. That's what's wrong. Somebody trained him with the belt. And 4 years later, he's still terrified. So it took me another 4 years to where I could dress or undress and he didn't get upset with the belt. He finally came to believe that his current situation was not his past situation. And he was faster than I am. It's taken me years to understand the voice in my mind is not me. The voice in my mind does not treat me well. And that to heal up my relationships with other people, it's this first. Because other people help me find this. Your husband helps you find any judgment you have. And it'll help you find the judgment you might have toward him or towards yourself. Fascinating. Your husband is your spiritual teacher. Yeah, take a breath. You can handle it. Really. To see my partner as my spiritual teacher, to see Mr. Trump as my spiritual teacher, or Mr. Obama or Mr. Bush or, anybody. I don't care. It all works. So when I react to people, I become aware of my physical, emotional, and mental reaction. I take responsibility, and I ask, what kind of mirror is this? What are you showing me? Somebody said to me that if you spot it, you got it. I guess that's somewhat true. If I see it in you and I react to it, it's mine. I have it too. Because if you're doing something and I react to it, inside of me, something is vibrating like a tuning fork at the same frequency you're vibrating. And I can blame you or I can look at mine. Those are my choices. So in this medicine, we don't ever ask people to be different. We don't expect the world to be different. We are thankful to Spirit when you send people like that to help me find my judge. And here's an interesting thing. My judge is what the Navajos call a shapeshifter. If I say to my judge, you're a real pain in the butt, then my judge says, I'm only trying to tell you what's wrong with you to help you. My judge goes into self-pity. And then if I say, I don't believe that either, then my judge says, you need me, it will create fear. And then my judge says, you're going to love this one, I know the truth about you. My judge says it knows the truth about me. Isn't that fascinating? Because I didn't have you when I was born. I inherited you. And it's my spiritual challenge to transform you. So here's an interesting thing. My judge can hide. Here's a good story. A couple of years ago, a psychiatrist came in because his doctor sent him over. He had a bleeding ulcer. And for us, a bleeding ulcer is, a duodenal ulcer is this inside, in stalking medicine. So he was sitting down and we're talking and he's sitting in a chair and he's looking at me and he says, my doctor sent me here. I have a bleeding ulcer. I am not upset. Right. So our first part was to get past the ego, the psychiatrist who doesn't get upset. That's our first part. And the way we did that is not with logic. We did that by having move into his body. The body tells the truth and the mind lies. The ego lives in the mind, left brain, and it lies. It protects itself. He says, I'm upset. I'm not upset. And his jaw is tight, and his ulcers hurt him. So we begin to get him to move into his body because he was a very smart guy. He'd gotten all the way through Harvard Medical School and his internship with his mind. Right? But his body was a wreck. His body was a wreck. So after a while, a couple of sessions, he got to where he said, man, I am upset. I am upset. And then he got into the clinical part. I am so upset that I'm dumping acid into my stomach. I'm eating a hole in myself. I am so upset. So you hear the awareness. And then we got to the responsibility. Again, my part's really easy. I said, well, tell me when your ulcer's worse. And he knew it right away. He said, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I said, well, tell me what happens on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You know, catch me up here, dude. And he said, you again. I got it. I am determined to get along with you today. How tempting it is to judge you. This is the problem, right? It's not me. So, he says, Tuesdays and Thursdays, these two old ladies come in. And he said, just talking about it, I can feel my ulcer starting right now. I said, well, tell me about these two ladies. He said, they remind me of my mother. Oh. So the next move, of course, was to put his mom in a chair. And he looked at Mom, who'd been dead 30 years, right? But not dead in his consciousness. And Spirit sent these two ladies, one on Tuesday and one on Thursday, to try to help wake him up. So we did a little work with Mom, letting Mom go, stopping the judgments, the complaints, the self-pity, letting that go and letting Mom go, finishing with Mom. And then we finished, and his ulcer went away. And he calls me up about 90 days later. He said, I just want to tell you. I said, tell me. He said, those two old ladies? I said, yeah, the one that helped you wake up about your mama? He said, yeah. He said, man, they have made remarkable improvements. I said, right on. Yeah, it's possible the physician was not giving them good treatment because of his unfinished business. You see that possibility? That if a therapist hasn't done the work on their unfinished business, if I don't know how to swim, I can't teach you how to swim. If I'm not aware that my mind creates my emotions, I'm going to be talking with you and agreeing with you that the world creates your emotions. If I'm asleep, I can't help you wake up. So my responsibility, at least the way I was taught this, is that every person that comes in that office is a mirror for me. Everybody I react to is a mirror for me. Spirit sends these mirrors to try to help me wake up. And some of them are easy, but here's one of them that's fascinating because it's not a painful mirror. Anybody here on the Jesus Road? I mean, this is your path? Okay. I think you're aware that the Jesus guy said, whatever I do, you can do more, and you will. Anybody recognize that? Yeah. Do you believe it? Yeah. Show me. Maybe you don't believe it. If you believe it, show me.
You can't see it. You can't see it. It's about feeling. It is.
Yeah. So, turn a little water into wine. I'll go get a glass of water over there and make it wine. So, if I believe it, then I do it, right? So, I've met a lot of people that are on the Jesus Road. I've very rarely met anybody that believes that they can do what Jesus does, even though Jesus said that, and they agree with it. That Jesus said, you can do whatever he did. I have an excuse. I was raised in a different religion. So, on the reservation, like my nephew Vernell will say, we love Jesus. We are into Jesus. We have some difficulty with Christians. Y'all ever seen that bumper sticker? Jesus, save me from your followers? Yeah, this guy, people will hurt you. No, in the name of Jesus, which is really hard to swallow. You mean you're killing me in the name of Jesus? Hard for me to accept that. So, everybody in my life, each of you here, my children, my grandchildren, the people I meet on the street in HEB, the lady that put 27 in the 15 only lines, how do I know she put 27? Because I counted. Oh, we're past 15. All right. There's my judgment. So I'm stalking my judgment of other people, and then I'm stalking my agreement with my judgments. That's where the power is. So here's the deal. Last story. Years ago, my oldest granddaughter's 28. When she was 17, she was telling me, Papa, I have trouble with boys. Well, probably. And she said, I keep choosing the wrong kind of boy. And I said, what does that mean? She said, they pretend they like me, and then they want to change me. We start off, they pretend they like me, then they want to change me. She said, it just keeps happening. She said, I don't know why. Papa, tell me how to find the right kind of boy. I said, well, baby, that might not be it. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, let's go in the living room. So we went in the living room. There's a big mirror. And I said, right now, I want you to look in the mirror in your own eyes, and I want you to say, today, I'm going to love myself just as I am. And she looks at me and says, okay, Papa. And she looks in the mirror and she said, today and I said, what happened, baby? She said, as soon as I thought the word love, I heard this voice off to the left that says, you're not pretty. I said, really? She said, yeah, I say that to myself all the time. I said, wait, you think that voice that said, you're not pretty, is you? She said, yeah. I said, no, baby, I told you 3 minutes after you were born. You didn't have that voice. That's not you. She said, Papa, that is me. It's I. I said, no, baby, it's not. That voice that you call I is not you. It even says you are not pretty. It uses the generic or the royal you to talk to you, like it is a different person. She said, where did that come from? I said, you inherited that. It's not your fault. She said, well, I hear that voice all the time. I said, I believe you. I said, tell me how much you look in the mirror. And she's 17. How much does she look in the mirror? Duh. So she said, I hear it every time I look in the mirror. When I go shopping with my girlfriends in the mall, and I look in the window and I see my reflection, I hear that voice. Well, you know now that every time she hears that voice, you're not pretty, and she agrees with that voice, her serotonin drops, her immune system drops, her stress hormones go off, and she feels separate from other people. So instead of trying to find the right guy, what we started doing is looking at that voice. And she said, Papa, where did I get it? I said, baby, it's not your fault. All two-leggeds have this voice. Four-leggeds don't have this voice. It's part of our spiritual journey. I said, you went to a school where they taught you judge not. She said, yeah. I said, they didn't teach you about that one. She said, they taught us not to judge other people. I said, well, that's east. There's also west. They taught you not to judge other people. What about self-judgment? Did they talk to you about that? She said, no, I've never heard of this, Papa. I said, I believe you, baby. Not your fault. So we began to look at how she heard that voice. She agreed with that voice. And she may have sent out a certain energy that attracted a certain kind of male. Wounded fish attract sharks. And that's the way our Creator set it up. Wounded fish attract sharks. If a wolf is hunting caribou up on the tundra, he doesn't look at the strong ones. He looks at the one that limps. That's the only one he looks at. He doesn't even see the other ones. The other ones will kick his brains out. He looks at the one that limps. Wounded fish attract sharks. So when she repeats this mantra, I'm not pretty, what kind of energy is she sending out? Down here. And she will attract men who are perpetrators. The polarity. Does that make sense? Not her fault. So, she began to become aware of the judge. What happened in her next relationship is the guy began to tell her he wanted her to go blonde instead of brunette. And she's gone. That was it. That was enough. That was enough. And then she said, Papa, I've gone through 3 or 4 of those. I said, it may take a while. It takes a few push-ups to get the handle of this. Not your fault. This is new information. You were taught judge not. You weren't taught anything about self-judgment. It's equally as powerful. Self-judgment is equally as powerful as judging others. So, I've shared with you this medicine way. It has to do with stalking, using our world and our interactions to find our reactions, to find what we judge, to find where we feel sorry for ourselves, how our mind wanders around in the future and creates anxiety, and how we believe our self-importance, the 4th self-indulgence, that we know the truth of how other people should behave. Isn't that fascinating? So, the last thing that we've become aware of in this medicine is the less I'm in control of my mind, myself, the more I want to control other people. Ain't that a kick? The less I'm in control of my thoughts and my behavior, if I can't go into HEB and look at those beautiful cookies and remember, I am hypoglycemic. I can have this. I can afford this. I'm over 21, but I'm going to be sick if I eat this. If I go to sleep and I eat those cookies, then my judge is next up. Isn't that interesting? I'll eat the cookies and then my judge will give me a hard time about that. So staying awake is opportunities are everywhere. I can walk into HEB this afternoon and keep moving, dude, keep moving. It's like those cookies are there. Many years ago, I decided to quit drinking, and I was on the way to Sundance, and there was somebody in the front seat with me driving up there, and we're going through this little town in Nebraska before we got up to the reservation. And in the little towns are these liquor stores. They're not allowed on the reservation. They're at the edge of the reservation. Very profitable. Anyway, there's this liquor store there, and I'm driving, and this lady's in the crosswalk with her short thing, and I almost hit her. I have to hit the brakes. And the person in the chair in the seat next to me says, "What's going on with you?" I said, "Man, I don't know. I wasn't paying attention." And this person says, "Every time we pass a liquor store, you're looking." I said, "You're right. They had a sale on Jack Daniels." And she says, "I thought you quit drinking." I said, "I did, 9 years ago. But part of my energy is still with the spirit of alcohol." So in my office, I have an altar, and I have a whiskey bottle on the altar. So every morning when I go pray, before I start the day, I can say to the spirit of alcohol, "My problem is not you. I asked you to help me not feel, and you always did what I asked. You always helped me go numb. You always helped me not feel. I have no complaint about you, the spirit of alcohol. It's how I used you. For some people, wine is the blood of Christ. It's holy. For people like me, that's not the trip. Not the trip." So, on my altar is an empty whiskey bottle, empty. And every morning, I give thanks to the spirit of alcohol that I survived. And I also say, you know, I had some good parties. Thanks. I had a lot of fun. It was good. Just this doesn't work for me anymore. Chocolate chip cookies don't work. Bourbon doesn't work. There's a lot of things that just don't work anymore. But my problem is not judgments of the spirit of alcohol. That spirit did what it promised. It said, "I will make you go numb. You will not have to feel your pain." It's okay. It did what it promised. So, problem's not the alcohol. It's how I use the alcohol. So, that's about all there is about this medicine. It's really very simple. However, it's not easy. Push-ups are simple. They are not easy. That makes sense? Simple. You don't need push-up clothes. You don't need a push-up gym. You don't need a push-up coach. You don't need any of that stuff. You can do them anywhere. They're not easy. So being aware and responsible is not easy. It's also not usual in our culture right now. You will frequently hear people say, "You pissed me off, you ruined my day." And now you know, people that say that are saying, "I am a leaf at the mercy of the wind." And to live life as a leaf at the mercy of the wind is not fun. I have done it for many years. I have blamed people for my misery. So now I'm in the process of taking responsibility. Fascinating stuff. So, still doing a lot of push-ups. Grateful. Thankful for you all coming here and for Unity, for letting us use their facility. It's a great facility for this. So, if you found anything worthwhile, you might offer a little bit for their utilities and their janitorial, because their arms are always open. They welcome us. Let's see if you have any questions or comments. Well, good. I did a great job. Oh, oops. Yes.
If one of my responsibilities for me in my life is to lead my sons to their spirit, to help them to the light. And if I see that if you are angry at me because you have a problem, and I don't get angry back at you, I simply allow you to be who you are. But you feel that I don't love you because I don't get angry at you. How do you break that cycle?
Like this.
Because I want my sons to love without seeking that kind of feedback. Because you said that in some families, if A is B and B is C, then C and B and A and D are all related. And love was expressed by you being angry at the person who loved you.
Being upset when they're upset. Right. Right.
And I'm teaching that it's okay to not be upset when that person is upset.
It's not only okay, it's a really good idea. Right. So this person may say, I think you're telling me, if you're not upset, that means you don't love me.
Because if you've grown up with
The idea.
yes,
Right. Right.
so how do you break that, or how do you change that mold now that they're going out into the world?
Well, most of the time I would not try to change the mold. I would shine the light on it. I might say back to the person, I'm not upset when you're upset. That means my heart is open to you. That's what that means. When I'm upset with you, my heart is not open. So I'm not upset with you. My heart is open. I want to tell you a story about this. We got time for one more story. Well, quite a few years ago, my son and his wife were going to Paris for a week, and they asked me to babysit the two girls, Sierra Rose and Mia. And cool, I'll do that. So the first night, Sierra comes in, and she's crying, and she got snot hanging out of her nose. And she said, Mia told my coloring book, Papa, I want you to punish her. And she's crying and crying. And I put her in her room, and I put Mia in her room, and I said, you two stay away from each other. Like 4 minutes later, they're in the hall fighting with each other again. And then Mia comes in. And Sierra did this, Papa. He did all this to me. She did all this. I want you to get Sierra and make her stop doing that. And I put her in her room, and I put her in her room, and I said, you two stop. Stay in your room. God, this is crazy. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to make it. This is not going well. So then I kind of woke up. I said, what's going on here? Self-pity is going on here. That's what's going on here. So Sierra comes into the room crying again. Mia beat me up. Papa, I want you to go spank her. You know, we don't spank my kids or my grandkids. She said, I want you to. And I said, wait, wait, Sierra. She said, what, Papa? And she's crying. And I said, before you tell me what Mia did, you have to put your hand up here. And then you can tell me what Mia did. And she looks at me, no crying. She says, I'm not doing that. And she walks out. All right. And of course, 4 minutes later, here comes Mia. And Mia says, Sierra, and she's crying and she's upset. And I said, wait, Mia, wait. You can't tell me this until you put your hand up here. She said, what? I said, put your hand up here and say, poor me, and then tell me what Sierra did. She said, I'm not doing that, Papa. And she walked out. So every time they came in, I'd say, what? And they'd run out. They wouldn't tell me. They wouldn't give me the complaint about the other person. So the rest of the 6 days went really, really well. Right? Because every time they wanted to complain, I went, no, don't talk to me unless you do this. And what was really cool is about a week later, my son called me after they're back from Paris. And he said, what did you do to the girls? What do you mean? I'm expecting judgment, right? He said, I came home the other night late, and Laurie, my daughter-in-law, had been out with the girls, and there was no food. And I just started giving Laurie a hard time in front of the girls. And then Sierra comes up and grabs my pant leg, and she's pulling on my pant leg. And I look at her and say, what? And Sierra says, Papa says you can't talk to Mommy like that unless you do this first. Yeah, you can't talk to Mommy like that unless you do this. So, I hope this story helps. A lot of this medicine is through teaching stories. Teaching stories are about us. They're not about you or me, they're us. So thank you all for this opportunity. The opportunity for me was to fulfill a commitment that I made to Germaine Sitting Crow as she was crossing over. I happened to be there holding her hand, which was a blessing. And she said, share the medicine, help the people, and stay on the clock. So Sunday afternoon is staying on the clock. So there's no charge for any of this stuff. It's called a wopila, a giveaway. Like up on the reservation, at least the place that I go, if a young couple have a baby, people don't give them gifts first. What happens is they give gifts. They're so grateful to be having a baby. They give gifts. They call it a wopila. They'll gather the community, and the gifts, it's a very poor community. Well, I'm not sure what this meant, but one year I was up there for some work, and they were having a wopila, and a couple I know was having a baby, and she gave me a washcloth and a bar of dial soap. What? There's some message in this? And then my nephew said, no, they do what they can afford. And everybody uses washcloths and soap, so that's what she could afford. And so thank you all. I get to fulfill my commitment to Germaine. I get to use you again, Mr. Trump. Thank you. Again, thank you, Unity, Reverend Mike, Mrs. Reverend Mike, and Brad, and everybody involved. And if you would, let's help us put the chairs back. Thank yourselves for coming. I hope it was worthwhile. Toksha. Oh, yes. Yes.